What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into Hawk Talk on Melrose. I am Collin, joined today with Tyler again. First episode in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. I did a solo episode a couple weeks ago, really going over football. And if you aren't new to this show, you kind of know that we mainly talk football on this podcast. However, today we are going to pivot a little bit and talk a little women's basketball because yesterday, 2-2, it was a picture-perfect day for the Iowa program, for Iowa athletics in general, for Iowa women's basketball. And so we figured we would come on, talk a little bit more about that. Our last episode, really going over Caitlin Clark and all that, was last April after the national championship game. And it was pretty much a tribute to Caitlin Clark. I'm going to have the URL posted below in the bio on YouTube. So if you haven't listened to that, I know it's a little old news, but it's more just kind of like a thank you to Caitlin Clark and what she meant to this team, to this program, to women's basketball in general. I would highly suggest you guys go back and listen to that. But so we are here today, going to mainly talk that. And then we're also going to talk a little men's basketball towards the end of this episode. But what are your kind of thoughts on yesterday and just everything in general with what all went on? Obviously with the win against USC, but then also the ceremony and honoring, the legacy of Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, I thought first and foremost, getting the win was, huge. I thought, being 2-2, honoring Caitlin Clark at the end of the game, I thought this might be too big of a stage for the Hawks to get the win and to get a 76-69 victory over number 4 USC and Juju Watkins, I thought was huge. And I thought, really encapsulated what was to come, and that was to honor CC at the end of the game. And, honestly, seeing her banner and then now getting to her, raising that banner at the end of the game, seeing her and her family and all the teammates, the Kate Martins, Gabby Marshalls of the world, and even Coach Bluder being in the building. It was a huge day. It was Iowa was at the focal point of basketball yesterday, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't ask for like a better script to yesterday. I mean, yes, you have the jersey retirement on 2-2, which I thought was really cool that they were able to do that with a game obviously being held that day. You get a win not only against, just some random old team. No, you get a win against a top 5 team in USC with a player that some recognize as maybe like the next Caitlin Clark. Now, will she be the next Caitlin Clark? I don't think you're ever going to see another Caitlin Clark for a long time, but Juju is kind of that next step in line, right? Kind of that transition from what we have had the last 4 years with Caitlin Clark. So to have her in the building, you had a loud, packed crowd the entire time. The atmosphere just looked insane. I don't think it really honestly did justice like on TV. And it really makes me like almost kind of like, damn it, I should have went to that, even though it would have cost a lot of money. But I just think it would have just been an incredible day. And then you had not only Caitlin Clark back, but you had former players back, Kate Martin, Gabby Marshall. You had your former coach back in Lisa Bluder. You had a signature win for Jan, right? Because this entire year, it's kind of been inconsistent, but yes, the Iowa State game was a good win, but like this was like a signature win. Like this is your best win, and you got to do it in front of Clark, in front of Lisa, in front of an atmosphere that was just insane. And then
David Letterman was there.
Yep, David Letterman was there. I was going to actually bring that up here in a little bit. And then, but not only that, but I think the biggest thing, because obviously the main talking point is like, can the momentum keep going post Caitlin Clark? Well, the way you're going to be able to do that is by getting good recruits. And yesterday you had some highly rated recruits there. Obviously you had Addie Deal, who's coming in next year, but then you had some other girls that are 5 stars in 2026, 2027. And like, if we can land some of those players, man, like the momentum's going to continue. That support's going to continue. And women's basketball for Iowa is going to be kind of like a blue blood moving forward.
Yeah. And then, just to add to yesterday, seeing the tribute, the highlight video and everything like that for Caitlin, and just, it brings up all those great memories that we got to really experience really the last 2 years. I know it's, she's been there, longer than that, but these last real 2 years when she was there, just the run that those teams were on, back-to-back national title appearances, beating some of these teams, UConn, South Carolina, the big dogs. it just brought like it was almost like it was awesome to reminisce, but it was almost kind of like sad because it's like I've never been that into women's basketball. And if I'm being completely honest, even this year I'm not as into it without her. But definitely still tuning in and watching some games and watching to see what happens post Caitlin Clark. But man, that 2 year run, I mean, there's gonna be nothing like it in really probably Iowa sports in general in my lifetime. I can't see anything topping that, really. I
made sure to write a note about saying that, how it, like, yesterday just felt like it was like full circle. All the memories of the last 4 years, seeing Bluder there, obviously Clark, but seeing, in Marshall, and even, and this is where I was going to bring up David Letterman, even seeing a celebrity in the stands, right? Because last year we saw Jason Sudeikis, we saw, who else was there?
Travis Scott.
We saw the State Farm commercial. Like, it felt like
Dave Portnoy.
Yep. Like, it felt like a game that was being played in LA, but it was at Carver-Hawkeye Arena. Right? So yeah. It felt like yesterday's game, even though Clark wasn't out there playing, even though Kate Martin was out there playing, even though Lisa Bluder wasn't out there coaching, it felt like a game from last year or the year prior. That's a good point. And that's what just made it so special, because I remember, on that last episode that we did talking about Caitlin Clark back in whatever that was, early April or late March or whenever the national championship game was, I remember saying this to you, of like waking up that Sunday of the national championship game, feeling obviously excited for the game, but also feeling like it was a little bit sad knowing that, like, after today, it's done. Like, that, this era of what brought me to actually watch women's basketball, to like just look forward to every single game, just be excited for Caitlin Clark and all the supporting cast. Like, it was kind of coming to an end. And even though I knew that the momentum would continue on post Caitlin Clark, I knew that it wasn't going to feel like this anymore. Like, these last 3 years was just so much fun. And so I remember waking up that day just kind of being like, man, like, I'm excited for today's game, but I'm also like really sad that it's over. And once again, yesterday was just a great, like I said, it just came full circle. The memories of the last few years all came back yesterday.
Yeah, and that's why it just made it that much more special that the team was able to get that victory, in that moment, to just, like you said, really encapsulate an insane day. And we could talk about it, and I I'll just add it here, and I think that's what Caitlin Clark's legacy kind of is leaving this program in a really good place where these Iowa fans want to sell out and continue to care about women's basketball and sell out these arenas and create an atmosphere unlike really any probably in women's basketball that I know of. And then, hopefully that leads to recruits showing up and wanting to commit there and building that type of culture. And I really think that's kind of maybe her lasting legacy, really.
I look at it like, not only did she change the game at Iowa and like our fan base, but she's changed it for the entire country for women's basketball. And you're seeing that now with her in the WNBA, like just in 1 year, how the popularity for the WNBA has risen. Because I'll be the first to admit, if you asked me 5 years ago, hey, 5 years from now, you're going to sort of tune into WNBA a little bit. Like, you're going to kind of keep tabs on a specific team, or you're going to watch a little bit, I would laugh in your face, be like, yeah, that's never going to happen. And now I'm looking back on that first year with Caitlin Clark. I watched her playoff games. If they were on TV, I would tune in a little bit. Like, I wasn't like a full on, like 100% fan. I'll be the first to admit that, but I was still tuning in. I was still seeing like what was going on. Who would have ever thought I would do that? So the success of all that, and just for the community, for Iowa, and how she's changed everything, right? The passion, the sold out crowds, and everything in between. And it's really cool with like the WNBA, how they're kind of gravitating towards that success. We found out a couple days ago that they're going to have a game inside Carver-Hawkeye on May 4th. That is incredible, right? To do something like that, where you're just drawing the fans that are like just so passionate, and you're kind of coming to them, which I think is a really cool thing. I'm sure it's going to be sold out. And like what Caitlin Clark said yesterday in her speech, that it's probably going to cost a lot of money. But I just think it's a really cool thing that they're doing.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be well worth it. I mean, that thing will be sold out instantly when those tickets become available, I'm sure. So it'd be cool. I joked with you. I'm like, dude, how awesome. I mean, because I don't know if I'll go to like an actual WNBA game in like Indiana or anything like that, but I mean, something like that would be really cool. I'm sure it'll be, like you said, super expensive though, but
Yeah, it would be, but it would be a cool thing. But I just think it's a really sweet thing that they're doing. You know, maybe this is a thing that we'll be doing moving forward. Like once a year, we're going to play a game there. I think that's really cool. Let's get now into more of this team and kind of this season in general. So I have the schedule pulled up here on YouTube if you guys are watching this. So you look at this year, and you knew that it was going to be kind of a transition year. I mean, you can't expect to be just as good as last year when you're losing a generational talent in Caitlin Clark, the Michael Jordan, the LeBron James, right? Like you can't replace that. And then you can't replace Kate Martin, who I don't think we as Iowa fans, maybe underappreciated her, but like maybe people outside did a little bit. But you look at her, it's so hard to make a WNBA team because what is there only like 14 or 15 teams? And so it's really hard to make it. Like you got to be really good to make a WNBA team. And she is playing in the WNBA, which tells you how good she actually is. So you lose her, you lose Gabby Marshall, you lose Molly Davis, like some really good pieces, along with a coach that's been here for over 20 years that's had a lot of success.
Yeah.
And, I think in a way, Jan has been maybe, what's the word? Like, I think a lot of people are really hard on her, but I really think like this year, despite it being very inconsistent, I think it really hasn't been that bad of a year considering how many players we lost, including our head coach. And you look at the schedule, we're 15-7, but man, like there was a couple games where if it went the other way, at Michigan State in December, a Michigan State team that is still ranked to this day, we lost by 2 points. We were up some of that game. Like if we win that game or Nebraska at home, and we make our free throws at the end of the game, we win that game. At Oregon, should have won that game. those are 3 losses that if you turn those into wins, you're sitting now at 18-4, which is really damn good. But even at 15-7, 5-6, after the USC game yesterday, like we're sitting pretty well. It's going to be one of those things where we got to, take care of business next couple of games, things like that. But, we're sitting well to make the tournament. And I think, once again, despite the inconsistency, I still think this year hasn't been that bad of a year because let's face it, we knew that this year was going to be a transition year. It just was, right? Now, next year we bring in, like Addie Deal, these 4 freshmen that we have now, they're all going to be sophomores come next year. Your hope is that they get better. And so that's kind of where we're at. And I think Jan has done a pretty good job. Obviously, there's been a few games where maybe her adjustments, maybe her lineups, where it's a little iffy. But I mean, what do you expect as a first-year head coach?
Looking at it right now, I think she's done a pretty good job of figuring things out post Clark era, right, and post really all those seniors. I mean even if Bluder was there, I'm still convinced that it would have been a pretty tough year. Now, would some of those losses have turned into a few more wins, maybe with the experience of Lisa? Yeah, probably. But she has, like you mentioned, 20 plus years of experience, and I know Jan's been with her for a really long time, but it's a different role as a head coach, compared to the assistant coach. You're worried about every little thing as the head coach, and you're making those on-court decisions during the game that, like you mentioned, lineups and things of that nature that really do affect the outcome of the game. So she's figuring it out just like everybody else, and you just mentioned it too. I mean, we got a lot of young players playing, crucial minutes this season where we really didn't have that last year.
Let's also remember, like Hannah Stolke was hurt at the beginning of the year. Right? She was out a few games. Cindy Falter was out much of I think she had surgery leading up to the season, so she was out a little bit. So like some of your quote unquote experienced players like weren't in there. So chemistry issues and all things like that. So,
and the big thing for me is when Iowa, the girls were on that 5-game losing streak, they could have quit, right? They could have just said, hey, this is what it is this season. We're struggling. They're getting it right back on track with three wins in a row and a big win against USC at home. And so I think, like you said, they're in a good spot. and like you said, they got to take care of business the rest of the way. But a 15-7 record right now, I think when you lose what you lost last year production wise, and including your head coach, I mean, I think you're in a decent spot.
Yeah.
At this point in the season, at least.
Going back to what I was saying about Jan and just maybe like the unfair treatment that she's been getting. You look at this game, for example, in Nebraska game at home. It's not her fault that we shot 16 for 29 from the free throw line. I mean, that is literally 13 points, and we lose by 3. So we shoot the ball. I mean, even if we go 25 for 29 or 24 for 29, we still easily win that game. So I think, like I said, the unfair treatment, it's just not really justified at this point. I think Jan's doing a fine job. There's been a few things here or there, but I mean, once again, it's her first year as head coach. You can't really expect anything, like what I mean, what do you expect? Right. It's not going to be all roses the entire time.
And really quick, and I'm just thinking of this now. I mean, think about the last 4 years with Caitlin Clark. End of the game, it's close. You're up by 1 or 2. You got to make a free throw. You throw it into her, and she's she's a 90% free throw shooter. You didn't have to worry about it.
Exactly.
Now you don't. I mean, that's you don't just again. She is one of a kind. She is the closer. You don't just replace that. So yes, there is an adjustment that is happening in real time.
This kind of reminds me, I know this is kind of off topic here, but like John Cook for Nebraska volleyball, he's retiring. And I was listening to his presser last week, and he was saying how he just felt like this was the right time because he's going to pass the torch on to someone from Louisville who's from Nebraska. And she's inheriting like a really good team. Like this team that went to the Final Four this last year is pretty much all coming back. And so you could say the same thing that like, yes, Lisa Bluder is handing the torch off to Jan in a really good momentum, which is true, but it's pretty tough. It's pretty difficult to manage when you're losing Caitlin Clark, when you're losing Kate Martin, right? So, I mean, yes, the momentum is at an all-time high. The fan support's at an all-time high, but I think it's actually even more pressure because you do have all that fan support. You do have all that momentum, and then you lose all these really good players, and now you have to kind of figure it out without them. It's pretty tough. So for us to be at 15-7 and easily, once again, going back to what I said, could have been, we could be 18-4, 17-15, or 17-5. I mean, you can take that. And looking at the rest of the schedule here before we kind of switch over to men's, at Minnesota, at Nebraska. But if you can somehow win those next 2 games, which I think are manageable, win at home against Rutgers, probably lose at Ohio State. And let's face it, we'll probably lose against UCLA. But then if you can finish off the year at Michigan, home against Wisconsin, get some dubs.
Yeah, it's a manageable schedule the rest of the way. And like you said, you got to win the games that are winnable. And, obviously, like you said, at that point, you feel pretty good about getting in. And that would be a very successful season, I think, first year under Jan Jenson. I don't think there's any question about that.
They were kind of on the bubble before the USC game. That win yesterday, I don't think many people were talking about how big of a win that is for your resume. And so as of right now, unless they just have a complete collapse, they're in the tournament. Now, once again, but they can't go on in like another 3 or 4 game losing streak. Else, it's going to be tough. But if they can keep kind of riding this momentum, like you said, 3-game win streak, let's keep, and you have every opportunity to here. You can definitely make the tournament. All right, now let's flip now over. Unfortunately, not as good to the other side.
And the pod on a low note, I see.
And I actually, when we're kind of thinking of last night, kind of like the topics and things like that, the title I put Iowa basketball in shambles. This is before I even knew that Owen Freeman was going to be out the rest of the year. But here we are, Owen Freeman out for the rest of the year with a hand injury. And it just seems, man, like what could go wrong has gone wrong for this men's basketball program. I know in the last episode you weren't on it, but I really touched on how this should probably be Fran's last year. And it's kind of all kind of gone up in flames right now. And it's just not looking pretty. Let's just say that it's not looking pretty.
I was just going to say, I mean, what's going on right now? It's one, and again, it's one thing to lose, and it's another thing to get absolutely dominated. And I feel like in the last, what is it?
The month
few
of January.
weeks.
Let's just say the month of January.
Yeah,
month of January.
4 weeks. It's been terrible. We don't have a road win this year, I'm pretty sure. Like a true road win. I think we're 0-5 or something.
Yep, because at Ohio State, at UCLA, at USC, at Wisconsin, at Michigan. So
I looked before we got on, and we're like, us and Northwestern are the only teams that don't have a road win in the Big Ten.
And not only do we not have a road win, but we get blown out on the road every single game.
Correct. We get blown out by double digits against teams like USC who can't score 60 points a game but have 60 at half. And that's where this problem lies. There's no effort really on and care for any sort of defense with this team. But that's not just this year. That is the last how many years under Fran? Maybe his whole career. I don't know if we've had good defensive teams back in the day. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, because what I did, a couple days ago, I was just looking on KenPom, and his first few years, the defensive efficiency was really bad. But then from 2014 to 2016, we were actually 30 ranked in defense efficiency, which is actually really good. But then it's just been 90s, 100, 120. There was one year we finished 160. Right now we're at 140 or something. I don't even know, but not good.
And that's where you just know we're not a serious team. We're not a serious contender to really do anything if we were to make it into the tournament. And I feel like that's kind of Fran's MO, is we get into the tournament, but then we lose right away because you don't have a defense that can carry you, especially when you get in the tournament and all of a sudden that great offense that Iowa usually has ain't so great anymore because you're playing in unfamiliar territory, right?
Yeah.
And that's usually what's been happening. But that, and then like you said, today with the Owen Freeman news, I mean, he's done for the year with a finger or something, a hand, or it just, I mean, add insult to injury with that. Who the hell is going to be down low for us that's going to be a factor?
Mulvey will probably be the person.
So, go ahead. You take it away. I don't even know what to say. It's obviously, it was a sinking ship before this injury. The ship has sunk, I think, on the season, really. I don't think we make the tournament, unfortunately. The stretch of games that are coming up are unbelievable.
Yeah, and we'll go through that.
With Purdue, but it's going to be too tough of a task, I feel like. And I just don't. And really quick, and I want to say this because I did watch your last episode, and I agree with you. We'll touch on it. Fran's got to go. This has gone on for too long, and I think he is, unlike women's basketball, really losing the fan support for this team.
Yeah, 100%.
So
I don't know how anybody can watch yesterday's game against, the USC game and seeing the fan support in Carver, right? Because everybody from men's always makes the excuse, it's Carver-Hawkeye. It's Carver-Hawkeye. It's Carver. No, it's not the arena. We saw yesterday how packed that arena was, how the atmosphere was insane, how loud it was. Yes. Now, does Carver have issues? Of course it does. It's outdated. The facility, right? Even the practice facility, it's all kind of outdated. It's not very good. I get that, but that's not the issue. The issue is, who is your head coach? The issue is, okay, the style of play. People are just tired of it. They're sick and tired of the lack of effort, the softness, the lack of defense, the being just athletic. It just seems like we're just not that athletic. And then you get into Big Ten play, and that's the reason why it seems like we get just killed, especially on the road. So it's a lot of different things. It really is. And just people are just done and over it.
I know we've got a few recruits coming in. What is your thoughts on, the years to come? Obviously the hope is that Fran, I'm just saying, I don't think Fran is the right fit anymore. I think, like you said, I don't know if the team thinks the same thing. They're not going to come out and say that, but I don't know.
I'm to the point where I said this on the last episode, time to get a new coach, new uniforms. I know it's that's a small thing. I get that. It sounds dumb, but we need a rebrand. We just need a refresh, a refresh button, new uniforms, new head coach, and honestly, just new players. I wouldn't mind having Owen Freeman and Josh Dix, and then, maybe, or Seydoux back. But everybody else, like, I wouldn't mind, like, if we brought in a new head coach, he brings his own players in and everybody else leaves. Like, we just need a new look. And so that's where I'm at personally.
I know. And okay. And then I guess the overreaction to the Owen Freeman news is, he's going to transfer. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I mean, I
don't want to put that out there. I'm just saying,
especially if this is Fran's last year. Like, I'm sure he probably might leave. I mean, I have no idea. I know Iowa's NIL for basketball isn't great. Now, could it be better with a new head coach? Maybe the support would be there. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see on that. And then just kind of going back to this season, but losing Owen Freeman is like losing your quarterback in football, because he led the team in scoring, he led the team in rebounding, he led the team in blocks, he led the team in field goal percentage. So you're losing all that. And I thought this was a very interesting stat by Scott Doctrine. The Hawkeyes are last in the Big Ten in rebounding margin at minus 5.43. So once again, you're losing the person that led you in rebounding, but we are last in the Big Ten in rebounding margin. The next team is Minnesota at 17th. Once again, minus 5.43. Keep that in mind. Minnesota at 1.18, minus 1.18. That big of a difference from 18th to 17th. So you go back to what you said about softness, pathetic. About rebounding, about defense. That is where the fan support's just done, because we're done seeing how every year it's like this. It's always consistent every single year.
And it's defense, but it's effort on defense. I mean, there should be 5 guys boxing out, and I don't see that. I just feel like you said it, the softness, kind of just not, there's no physicality. Big Ten, we talk about Big Ten basketball, you talk about physicality, right? I don't see that. I see a team that wants to settle, that wants to shoot threes. And like you said, besides Owen Freeman, when he can, kind of get his, like, there's nothing down low. And now we're screwed, but it didn't really matter. Like you said, I think
because it just feels like it wasn't over.
It wasn't going to do much anyway. It just sucks. It's just another sort of cherry on top to a shitty season for sure.
So let's take a look real quick before we end this, just kind of the rest of the schedule. Man, like, I look at this schedule, Purdue at home, Wisconsin at home. I mean, and then you go on the road at Rutgers, at Maryland. We just talked about it. I mean, we're not good on the road. Then you play Oregon at home. Washington's probably your only, win, just because Washington's very good. But if without Owen, I don't know. And then at Illinois, at Northwestern, home against Michigan State, and then at Nebraska. And in Nebraska, they're now kind of kicking in stride. They just beat Illinois. They just went on the road at Oregon. They had that 5 or 6 game losing streak. Well, now they're, kind of back, and they're tough to play and win at, especially at Pinnacle Bank. Man, 10 more games. I could see us literally going 1-9, 2-8, 0-10. In all reality, probably not 0-10. We'll get a win or 2 in there, but 1-9, 2-10, or 2-8, which then leads you to
about to go south. Probably,
where we are at in the standings. And keep in mind, only the top 15 teams go to the Big Ten tournament. So you brought up earlier about this team probably won't make the NCAA tournament. Hell, we might not even make the Big Ten tournament at this point. We're 4-6 in Big Ten play. And if I just told you, if we go 2-8 to finish the year, or 1-9, that is then 6-14 or 5-15.
I don't know.
You're probably going to be in the bottom 3, honestly, and you probably won't even make the Big Ten tournament, which, once again, it sucks now in the moment, but maybe we need this to happen to just spark that change, spark that, Beth Getz kind of pulling the plug and just moving on from Fran, just because it is time. And so maybe, yes, sucks now, pain now, but later on, we're feeling a lot better, right? We're looking back at this moment, at this time, being thank God this kind of happened for this to kind of set up. It was almost kind of like Brian Ferentz, right? It got so bad, right? And in the moment it sucked, but it got so bad, and us losing to Minnesota, which we almost beat Minnesota, if it was, the Cooper DeJean thing, but them losing that kind of sparked that, okay, something needs to change. Something needs to happen. So sometimes those things need to happen. So we'll just have to wait and see. Regardless, it's not looking good. That's for sure. No. Well, we will end it there. Talking, like I said, a little basketball. We will be back in a few weeks. We got some football. We're going to look back at the 2024 season, look at Tim Lester's first year as offensive coordinator. look at, can Iowa compete in the new Big Ten with some of the teams and things like that. So that will all be coming up next here in the next few weeks. But until then, have a good rest of your week and go Hawks.